parents, the child goes to the teacher who will guide that child.
What do you mean by external moral authority? You use that expression a lot.
Materialism has to do with when you are
Hello, it's great to have all of you back with us for the course in Values and Spirituality. We are currently at page 66 on book 1, entitled Science and Technology Without Values. Sister Denise, the author of these books, is with us in the studio, and she will be giving us an definition and elaborating on what she means by what is contained in these books. Sister Denise, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
So let us start with the first paragraph. You start by saying the following: modernization and economic competition in the world market require a high degree of scientific and technological knowledge. The emphasis today is on material development, production of a large variety of consumer goods, and on raising economic standards. Would you tell us how this aspect impacts on one's values?
Well, it's a clash of values. On the one hand, you want to get ahead materially, and whatever you have to do to get there, that means you need to get a good degree in science so that you can go out and get work so that you can get more money. And then you show that money by your house, your car, your holidays, your whatever, your clothes, all these things. And the advancement of science is connected with being able to do things better than you were able to do before. Some of the things that science is able to do has an effect on people's lives that's found out only after the invention went in. Take, for example, computers. Now, computers require microscopes to make. You have people who make computers and they ruin their eyes, rather like in China, the forbidden stitch. Well, that's been replaced by computer building because you get equally blind by doing that, but there's no protection for people who get damaged. Science has raised the chemical industry, and so you get a lot of toxic chemicals that are around which poison people who live in those areas. You get a lot of increase in incidence of cancer associated with the presence of toxic chemicals. And so you get a group of people, the wealthy, who benefit from these items, technical items, and then you get another group of people that's hidden, and they pay a very high human price, which is never factored in. I mean, you never see an advertisement for a beautiful computer which will say, this computer will cost you $5,000 and 100 people died so that you could have this. You know, because nobody would buy it. And so the hidden cost in the lowering of the quality of people who have to suffer so that these items can be received, or so that you can have inexpensive clothing. People have to work in sweatshops. I mean, we see examples of in Bangladesh, for example, which is a very poor country, where there's no concern about the safety of workers. So you have these huge fires that have occurred, and everyone in the factory died because there was no escape route and there was no way to contain fires. And so the business people will cause a lot of human damage, and they're able to do it better because of the advancement of technology. So technology will give us better lifestyle in many areas, but there's a hidden cost, and that cost also is taken out on the environment as well.
What did you mean by the following lines? Education in human and moral values has been disregarded and largely considered irrelevant as a preparation for life. I was under the impression that most school curriculums contain values in education.
There is something called moral science.
Okay, tell us more.
That you get in India. But you see, it's rather like cooking, you know. It's for people who are not good academically. It's secondary, you see. The people who get good grades in physics, in maths, what people want at school is to be able to get into technical universities. What happens is the parents of children want them to excel academically, and so that they can get a good job, because especially in India, the sons make money and that money goes back to the parents. And so obviously the parents are going to look upon their children as sources of income. And when you are materially minded, then your values are, I need money, and whatever it costs to get it doesn't matter as much as the money. So your problem is that materialism is more widespread and more of an energy that drives the curriculum in the school system, because the parents want kids who can get into technical universities, who can get into industry, who can go and make money. And having money is more important than being a well-rounded, ethically correct person. And this goes back to social attitudes. We're in a society that is severely materialistic. And, you know, to try to bring in higher principles, you know, it's quite a hard job to sell it to somebody who doesn't care about it. As long as you can get away with your crimes, you will.
And yet you don't.
Right.
Okay.
So this part you can bring into the education system. You know, instead of saying be nice to everybody and take care about the other people, they have to understand that what is the cost, personal cost, which is why I keep on bringing in the laws of karma, because that is the only way that you can understand there is no free lunch, and you will pay for everything that you take. So be judicious.
We now go on to the end of that paragraph, which reads, India may produce well-trained scientists, engineers, and doctors, but Indian society shows increasing signs of suffering from the loss of human and moral values, which have been displaced by materialism. Very strong words, very strong medicine, but yet one cannot ignore the ring of truth in it.
Well, that's the thing. You know, India had been relegated to a very poor country for a long, long time, exploited and so on. So it's kind of a revenge, you know, which is understandable. But it's a revenge taken at one's own cost, you see. So this falling in love with technology and without thinking about what the costs are, the hidden costs are, has meant that this is the problem. Now, one of the things that you see is how women are being subjected to a great deal of sexual harassment in this environment, you see, because women are now coming into the workplace, they're more out there in the streets and everything. They're going shopping and so on without chaperones, and so people are taking advantage of that, and you get a lot of very antagonistic behavior, what they call Eve teasing and so on, is rife, and people just have made it as a free-for-all, just eat, drink and be merry kind of thing. And now we have to see, okay, now do you realize there's a cost?
I found the next few sentences very thought-provoking, and I'd like you to expand on it and elaborate on it for us, please. Scientific and technical study may increase a student's knowledge of formulae and sharpen his or her memory and numerical facilities. However, without learning to apply the powers of reasoning and analysis to subjects like language, literature, social sciences, philosophy, history, and political science, students are inadequately prepared for the breadth and depth of human life. That's a lot of words, and one is left with a feeling of ouch.
Yes.
By the time a student leaves school, he's only half equipped to deal with life and not fully equipped.
Well, that's the problem. And then his or her behavior is very crass and superficial, and people only want money and the things that money can buy. And then the deeper aspects and sensitivities to the finer characteristics of life and what it means to be a human being, they're completely overshadowed by this rush to get more stuff and to look good with status symbols and brand name items and bags and shoes and all of this, and people only talk about that stuff. And you know, the older generation may lament it and talk about it, but the older generation belongs to a different mentality, really. As I said before, this is really what people were thinking 20, 30, 40 years ago from now. And there has been a shift because of some of the things that have happened, which have made people aware that there's something wrong with our value system, not because they've been told it, but things that you see in the media about how people behave towards each other has had some shock value, and people are starting to think, wait a minute, we need to do things differently. And that, I think, is very positive.
You go on to say, the natural rhythms of life get superseded by workaholism, where people fall into a vicious cycle of overwork, sleep deprivation, falling into debt by buying the consumer durables offered through advertising, and a constant feeling of dissatisfaction. I can easily follow your line of reasoning and see how the problem escalates and the individual is weakened.
That's right. And this is because of the system of credit cards, which was not allowed in India for quite a long time, but now here it is. And so you have this culture of debt and the culture of banks owning the debtors and the mortgages, and, you know, property values in India are equivalent to United States, but salaries are only that for a very, very small cream of the wealthiest. And so this is the thing that has created this vast discrepancy between the rich and the poor. And politically, when you do this, you set up a tension in the society where the social cohesion will break down. And this is really a big danger in India at this time.
Sister Denise, what would you say would be the impetus for change?
Quite frankly, the impetus for change is the shock value when things go really badly wrong, because that tends to wake people up a bit. But people will not change as long as they don't have to. For a person to feel internally that, no, I'm really going against my conscience, I don't want to do this anymore, it's a rare person who will get a kind of internal awakening, but there are people who are doing this. And I met recently with a young man who has a young family and was working as a truck driver and you know, comes from pretty humble origins, but was in the United States, able to make a lot of money, and then reflecting on his behavior, and all of a sudden got it that what am I doing? You know, why am I behaving like this? I'm really destroying my life by making it completely meaningless. Someone like this who gets an inner awakening and really start to change their life, that is starting to happen. And that's very encouraging.
Well, that warms the heart to hear such stories, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I would now like to take you on to our next subject, the exploitation of nature, something that may sit quite deeply with viewers who are concerned about our environment. It reads, although India is still a predominantly agricultural society, there is a lack of harmony between her people and the environment. Sister Denise, from the perspective of somebody like me who was born outside India, I wouldn't have said so, because I have seen numerous examples of people literally worshipping Mother Earth. So tell us how you arrived at this conclusion.
I think that there's a real discrepancy between the religious streams where you do worship the earth, and you'll find in every field a little temple, and the cows are worshipped, and there's all of this integration of agriculture and religion. But at the same time, deforestation, the desertification is taking place. So once you start to bring in big business into the agricultural areas, or you bring in, you know, one of the really big problems was the soft drink companies, which destroyed the groundwater, took, I think you take 16 liters of water to make 1 liter of soft drink, sodas, you know. And so the advertising says, oh, you have to drink this stuff, which is full of sugar and which is really not good for you. And then the cost to the environment was such that it could never get repaired. The salt coming into agricultural land and so on. A lot of population in India has been a big factor, because you see the land really depleted, not enough wood. People take the wood, although there are very stringent laws to protect the trees, but you see garbage everywhere, you see a complete disregard for that harmony between people and nature, notwithstanding the religious aspect, you see.
Yeah. Society today, you continue to say, is behaving in a similar way, having just used an example in the text. If we do not give up unthinking and selfish plundering of the environment, we will lose it altogether.
Oh, well, that's happening. And it's something that is happening so powerfully that even environmental activism is there in India, but it's not very powerful, and it's not really able to stem the destruction of the environment, because where you have a very, very high population, people will be more concerned with getting food and getting water at any cost, and if the cost is the environment, then so be it. Because when people are in survival, their survival becomes more important than the wider picture, the wider landscape.
If the viewer wants to make a conscious decision to have a more respectful and harmonious relationship with Mother Nature, how do we go about it? What behaviors should we engage in and not engage in?
Well, it really means that you have to consider self-restraint on every level. You know, are you using more than you need? And really trying to identify this line that goes between fulfilling your needs and fulfilling your greed. So it's really all about just thinking, do I need this?
I'm curious, you mentioned the law of karma in most of the episodes that we covered. Does the law of karma come into play in respect of our relationship to Mother Nature? And if so, tell us how.
Well, we definitely have a relationship with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if I am taking care of and loving the natural world and looking after it and respecting it and just taking care in many different ways, I get the return of that. If I am destructive, I end up with not having water when I want to have water, dealing with extremes of temperature, you know, because nature will take its dues. The law of karma, the machinery of karma is very, very subtle. Your body is given to you by the earth. It is of the same proportions of air, earth, fire, water, and ether as the earth is. And a lot of time people will abuse their own bodies because of sense gratifications and so on and so forth, and they will end up with sick bodies, and that is also nature taking its revenge, you know.
In terms of what you started off this discussion with on exploitation of nature, you say on the one hand, people in India worship nature as a deity, and on the other hand, there is reckless felling of trees and pollution of the air, soil and water with illegal pesticides and toxic industrial waste. How does one then lead a more balanced life?
Well, again, it comes back to corruption, it comes back to greed, it comes back to the principle that in the society people want to be rich, they want to have property, they want power and influence, and they don't really care what it costs. So I think the idea of bringing into people's awareness the philosophy of karma, because if a person isn't naturally sensitive to what they're doing through the voice of conscience, then the harsher voice of the consequences of karma is one that you cannot really avoid listening to. So, but if people are aware of that beforehand, that I think gives an incentive to behave responsibly, because the law of karma says you will be called to account and you cannot escape, and corruption doesn't work. Who are you going to pay? And together with the laws of karma, if you bring in the idea of religion, comes, you know, the messengers of death. They're very scary. When you die in sorrow, and it's so intricately tied up with the laws of karma. So I think that if we can really give people a good, solid education in karma, it will force people to think, because they will have to factor it in. At the moment, you're just looking at your bank account. But if you factor in all the aspects of karma and really look at it, and it becomes part of the culture, it becomes popular, popularize awareness of karma, then I think people will become much more self-responsible and expect to be held accountable. At the moment, they think, I can get away with it. And knowing the laws of karma means knowing that you actually can't. So rethink your value system and put accountability much higher up on the list.
Most of us do not really consider the question of the law of karma when it comes to Mother Nature. We take her for granted because Mother Nature never complains. But if we do not give her the respect, her meaning Mother Nature, the respect that she deserves, Sister Denise very clearly set out what the consequences are. And if Mother Nature comes to collect, then we actually can't say no. So I do like the expanding of knowledge that took place today, and I do thank Sister Denise for her refreshingly fresh approach, new approach to teaching knowledge. So thank you, Sister Denise, and thank you, viewers, for joining us. We hope to see you soon for the next episode. Take care and goodbye.